So I have a couple of other questions. And, thinking about your business journey, what would have been one of the things that's been the most difficult to going from concept through to something that is available and being offered online?
Yeah, really good question. I'm going to have to say that was probably one of the things that you pushed me on, and that was the whole idea of being a thought leader or creating a thought leadership position. And I think, I've got some evidence in the last few weeks that's actually happened or happening, still happening. I'm up to about 130 fairly long form articles that I've written, Trudy, and I've appreciated your support in making that effort to do that. And as a result of that, I've had one of the large consulting firms, one of the partners has been reading that for a few months and made contact and said, look, we really like what you're doing. But a few months that's quite a lot of contact points that person's had to read and consume, and then actually send an email and say, hey, let's talk. So real example there of thought leadership as a mechanism to win your way in. You've got to earn the interest of people. It doesn't just happen because you do some TikTok things or some short videos or stuff like that. The actual long form writing, real value transfer, piquing people's interest, challenging them, being a bit cheeky, all of that, it comes with, creates that sort of persona and character in people's minds where they go, oh yeah, that aunt's got a position, or they're doing some thought leadership. So that's one thing. The other thing I think is just having a lot of patience and hanging in there. As I said before, trying to create a product where there is no product, working with a market where there is no obvious market. Those kind of things are really hard. And what I've learned is having a community that's supportive around you is just gold. Having people to talk to, having people to ring up or occasionally check in with, and they go, well, actually, since we caught up last time, you're making progress. Great. Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's good. So actually having a community that supports your progress and doing some of those things around thought leadership, I think are definitely worthwhile doing, because it does actually sharpen you. Particularly, I found that in the initial, year, the writing was really hard. Just grinding away, doing an article every week was really hard work. But now I've got into a pattern where I've got a whole bunch of things that are all sort of part written, and finishing them off is really just a matter of contextualizing stuff for the moment. So you do learn, you do grow into it. So my advice was that, anyone who's got that ability to move into a thought leadership position, it's worthwhile making the effort. And then the other piece, of course, is having other people that you're working with. I've got a little team around me that we just know each other so well now. We've done a lot of hard yards together, and we've worked out that I think the target market for us is organizations that have teams where we've got people in those teams that are concerned about the future and they want to do work, so we can put a team through the program. That can be in government, central government, local government in particular is really concerned about what's going on, because they're the people that have the real ratepayers, the real people in the streets, the real issues with infrastructure, that sort of thing. So they are deeply concerned about doing stuff. So they seem to be open to what we're talking about. And businesses are starting to realise too that their social license is up for grabs if they don't get going on some of this stuff.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, for sure. Especially as the world becomes more focused on not just the bottom line with the dollar and stuff like that, but the environmental impacts, the societal impacts and things like that. I think that's really important. I just want to come back a little bit to the whole concept of thought leadership. So for a lot of consultants, for our listeners, you probably would have heard a lot of people talk about thought leadership, and this person's a thought leader and that person's a thought leader, and that's et cetera, et cetera. It's gotten to the point where it's almost cliched out of meaning. And you and I had a conversation about this not that long ago. And I think it's really useful to just say that a thought leader is exactly what the words say. It's someone who's doing the thinking that's out of the box and it's different to what everybody else is doing. And sometimes it's counterintuitive. Sometimes it goes against the theory, but at the same time, there's an opinion that's being expressed. And it's usually, well, to be, I guess, credible, it has to be based on some sort of evidence, some sort of way of going, yeah, I'm saying this because of this XYZ. And based on my experience, I know what I'm talking about. And I have to say that the role that you've played in starting to bring people's thinking to the forefront and to start to grasp some of these concepts that we have to grasp, to grapple with as society, as individuals, as communities. I believe that you are genuinely somebody who thinks deeply about these things and is able to express those concepts and ideas in a way that makes sense. So whether you use the word thought leader or not, the things that you're writing about are really critical. Now, one of the reasons why I'm saying that and talking about it so much is that for our listeners, if you're interested in this topic and you really would like to access some of these articles that Grant's been talking about, all you have to do is go to his website, and I'll get him to share the URL in a sec, and sign up to his email list, because I'm on his email list, and every week I get a really in-depth, really crunchy, deep, thought-provoking email that I do not always agree with, but it definitely causes discussions and it makes me think. And I find that really valuable because it's too easy to write fluff. And fluff might feel good, but it doesn't get you anywhere. And so I really enjoy these conversations. So Grant, if people were interested in actually signing up to your email to receive these thought-provoking articles, emails, where would they go?
Yep, they can just go to the website hq.nz, and you'll find on the menu out to the side there's the newsletter, and they can just sign there. So yeah, they'll be more than welcome to join that. And yeah, to what you said there, Trudy, I've got quite a few people that write in and they go, oh, we really love the Transition Edge newsletter, but we really hate it too. And I think there's people who can stay in the game and write about this stuff and passionate about it, and I've stuck in there, and sometimes it's hard and sometimes you get criticized and you're saying things that maybe not everybody agrees with, because this is actually a really new, tricky space, and you're going to screw up occasionally, but yeah, like you get feedback on that and so on. So yeah, anybody who wants to have a look at what we're doing and sign up for the newsletter, that's www.thq.nz.